There is a name that many of you have heard and many of you perhaps have not have heard. And in my view, this is Mr. Canada Hemp, the guy who in some ways lives and breathes this for you. And his name is Ted Haney. And Ted, come on up. You're going to manage the next 45 minutes.
Thank you, Perry, and thank you, Manny, for the original invitation. I really like the logistics that you put together for speakers. It's always behind-the-scenes stuff. Is it easy to get your materials in? Is it just an easy process? And you've made it very easy. Just before I move into my actual presentation, I just wanted to, for a moment, have us recognize our good friends in the Ukraine Institute of Bast Crops. They have, over the years, developed many of the cultivars that have been moved to Canada, in some cases further developed through additional plant breeding. But it is one of the real centers of expertise, and they are they're in Kyiv, and they have their genetic storehouse that has been moved out of Kyiv, which is fundamentally the basis of their past research results, and it is the feedstock for their future. And the individuals stayed there. They stayed at the Institute. They stayed with the seed until they were able to logistically move it out of Kyiv and get it to a safer place. So just for a moment, I'd like to just recognize them. They're in the middle of it. It's a very difficult time. Okay. So I was asked to talk about global hemp industry, and I will do that, but I'm also going to talk about the Canadian hemp industry from a national perspective. It doesn't matter what group I'm in, I still show this. Hemp is cannabis, but it isn't marijuana. In Canada, hemp is a plant, or any part of the plant, of the cannabis sativa L plant with less than 0.3% THC in the leaves and flowering head. From a taxonomy perspective, it's the same plant, but they diverged a very long time ago into industrial uses and food and feed uses for hemp, and other uses for cannabis. It's a multiple market opportunity crop. Hemp seed for food, our major products today, dehulled hemp seed oil, hemp protein concentrates, toasted hemp seed. These are the, if you will, the seeds in a bag part of our business that is now becoming the beginning of our next move forward I'll talk about, and that's hemp as a processed food ingredient. Other compelling opportunities in livestock feed, and I'll touch on that, fiber, and fractions. And fractions, generally we refer to that as the extraction process out of flowers and leaves, cannabinoids, but quite frankly, there are fractions to be extracted out of the stalk, out of roots, even out of seed. So it's the fractions market is an area that today is quite narrow, and tomorrow will be much wider. 5 pillars of the hemp industry and our blueprint for contributing $1 billion to the Canadian economy. We understand this up in Canada. I was giving these presentations in the U.S. Soon after I arrived on the scene in 2018, and they looked at me like I had 2 heads. Farming, well, that's what the greenhouse people do. That's what the orchard cultivators do. Food doesn't matter. That's a poor man's game. Feed, irrelevant. Fiber, as little as we can get. And fractions was everything. And their blow up was amazing as a result. But we get it in Canada. These are the 5 pillars: farming, food, feed, fiber, and fractions. They all fit together. They are together our industry. And it sets us apart from virtually any other mainline crop in Canada with such a diverse set of revenues from one crop. Who we are, we're a national nonprofit association established in 2003. We are, our members are vest the interest of leadership in the board of directors, and the plans are implemented by management with massive support from our committees. Our vision is that CHTA is the go-to organization for industry, government, consumers looking for expertise, insight into hemp food, feed, fiber, fractions. And our purpose is to champion a diverse and robust Canadian hemp industry that benefits all involved. Committees inside the organization is where most of the work actually gets done. So there are 3 standing committees and 5 ad hoc committees. There are as well 11 subcommittees operating underneath the ad hoc committees. So for standards, there's 1 for food, 1 for feed, 1 for fiber, and 1 for fractions and research as well. We did up a count here the other day, and there are 104 industry, primarily, a few government people, that volunteer their time and subject matter expertise within that committee structure. And those individuals are from Canada, they're from the United States, and globally as well. I've never seen an organization with that size of volunteer corps in their operating and functional committees work. But governance, government relations, market development, the Canadian Hemp Promotion and Research Agency Committee, research and standards are the ad hoc committees where, again, so much of the work of the organization actually takes place. We're member-driven. As at the close of our last AGM, we had 292 members, including 155 farmers. I've learned that sets us apart from many of the hemp organizations around the world that have lobbyists and have business interests. They may have processors, but they don't have that fundamental base that starts at production and goes all the way up. Again, a wide range of other members that are there as well. If you add up the total on each sector, it's much higher than 292. That's because many of our members are actually engaged in more than one activity. And so we just count how many members are involved in consumer products, a total of 74. Our membership is located in 9 of 10 provinces. We do not have a member in Newfoundland and Labrador. We have 14 international members from Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Oceania. Most of those are peer organizations. And it's important to note, when it's member-driven, our members elect the directors of the organization. On a global basis, hemp has been growing since 2010. The basic shape of this bar graph is quite similar in Canada, which is where I'm going to go next. But the major players have been Canada in red, then Europe, and more recently the United States. That number is, that part of the bar is going to shrink since the USDA recently came out with a much smaller number of seeded hectares or acres than what industry had been reporting. They'll shrink back to about 40,000 acres. Above that is China in the bright green. That is definitely underreported. We think there's about twice as many actual hemp acres there. And then all the rest of the world. And the rest of the world, probably the biggest area of growth today, right now, is Africa, followed by the preparatory work is underway in South America. So as the individual countries start to flourish, we'll be breaking those out as well. But the 4 are Canada, United States, Europe, and China are the big 4 players. In Canada, I should say also on, globally, we peaked over 600,000 acres in 2019. It dropped off in Canada and in many other countries in 2020. but we're seeing a regrowth of acres as well. In Canada, since after 2009, there's been lots of volatility, but also continued growth in our industry. In Canada, until recently, until that last little bar on the right side that going up, it was driven by food and driven by food processing capacity. Our industry was, in fact, a build it and they will come. As capacity increased in food processing, they contracted more acres and more acres were seeded, led primarily by Manitoba Harvest, but others who've been in the business over the years as well, and new entrants even now, which is fantastic. But that growth that you see in 2022 really is the emergence of fiber acres. So we peaked at about 115,000 acres in 2017. That was an incredible moment of, I'll quote Mr. Greenspan, excessive enthusiasm. We'd done a bunch of trade into South Korea in 2016. Players went out and contracted a massive amount of acres to fill that demand on an annual basis and on into the future. And we got essentially closed out of South Korea by the end of 2016, and yet those acres went in. So we carried a lot of that inventory up until 2020. And it was always a hangover on our industry. It was a weight, too much inventory in bins that was aging. That in 2020 and 2021, processors went to work on that inventory, and the inventory is at this point down to reasonable levels. The old inventory is basically gone, and inventory is now in a more manageable form. So while the acres didn't grow in 2021, in fact, processing volumes did go up, but they did that by drawing down inventory. Now it's time to start regrowing the industry again. Looking at 2020, which is the last year we have full data on, this is something I was asked to put together by the European Industrial Hemp Association. They wanted to know, how much do you produce in weight? You know, we talk about value and we talk about acres, but how much do you actually produce? And by our back of the envelope calculating, we looked at about 40,000 metric tons of production. And by far the largest at that time was conventional seed, followed by livestock feed, which was primarily exported to Europe as bird seed, and straw and stock, as well as again, the organic hemp seed production was starting to come in as well. So that was out of the 60,500 acres that were seeded in 2020, so 40,000 tons. Looking at exports during that period of time, we saw that big surge in 2016, which was really driven by the dehulled hemp seed or hemp seed exports to South Korea. But at this time, clearly, the exports have been focused on hemp seed with contributions from protein products that either is exporting of the actual meal or of protein concentrates. And fiber was just starting to show up in the export trade, and as well, the value-added fiber was, again, showed up in 2022 as we, we're early in the year, but the data is starting to flow in. So the mix has changed. We are going to be a fairly diverse and therefore stable industry as that balance continues, to roll out in front of us. That will decrease volatility. Imports, exports, they peaked in 2016 at about $143 million. Last year, they were sitting at about $120 million. So here in the next year or two, we expect we'll actually pass our all-time high on exports, but it'll be by far more diverse than that it was. Diverse by the number of countries we export to, and diverse by the products that we export as well. On imports, we do trade in both directions. We import hemp seed, we import protein, we import hemp seed oil, we import all major products. It peaked at about $3.4 million in 2020. Those numbers have come down. A very large contributor to that import market was fiber, and primarily that was import of bast, clean bast fiber, imported by value-added processors who couldn't get what they needed for feedstock in Canada, and couldn't get it at the right price, couldn't get it at the right specifications, and so they went to the Netherlands, and they went to France primarily to begin importing, and that really started to show up. But still, at the end of the day, hemp seed has been traditionally quite dominant in the both export and imports. Looking at what countries, looking at the comparative exports and imports, the United States has generally been around 90+% of our export destination, export products. Europe, South Korea, Japan, India, also destinations in our top 5 named, and then all others. A total others of 44, so we exported 49 markets in the last 5 years. On imports, again, we import a lot of hemp seed, primarily dehulled hemp seed, from the United States. As I said, fiber in Europe. China has primarily been dehulled hemp seed and hemp seed oil coming into Canada. Ethiopia has been fiber and hemp seed, and India has been also fiber and some hemp seed. And then another 55 countries as well. So we actually imported from 60 countries over the last 5 years. But exports are 40 times our imports. And so we are an export-oriented industry that also imports. So some of the key results indicators or key performance indicators that we've been able to generate for our industry is here. And again, at a base year is 2020, with 60,500 acres, production of 40,000 tons, farm gate sales of about $55 million, export sales 127, domestic markets about 133 million, total of 260 million industry sales of primary and processed products. We employed about 1,300 people with a almost $80 million payroll. Annual invested capital around $75 million, with again about $13 million in R&D expenses, and we pay about $13 million in federal and provincial taxes at a corporate rate of 4% of net of gross sales. Sorry, an economic contribution to the Canadian economy, $555 million in 2020. Where are we going? This is a set of numbers that have been vetted through industry players, producers, processors, and others many times, and it has shifted over time. We don't set a single number and just leave it there. It's not a number that's dreamed up within a board meeting and said, yep, that sounds about right. It is continually vetted and continually reviewed by leaders in the industry. And we believe that our industry, by 2030, this is in dollars, will move up to an economic contribution of just under $2 billion, hitting the billion-dollar economic contribution level in 2025. The economic contribution will come from the food, feed, fiber, fractions sectors. And in all cases, you really are starting to see, again, that diversity of revenue sources in our industry. To do that, our industry believes that it will move up toward just under 245,000 acres seeded by 2030. On commercial production, I'm not going to go through all the numbers. I'm sure AHA will make the presentation available. But moving from 40,000 tons of physical production up to just over 330,000 tons of physical production. There's a shift as you go through. Straw moving up from 12,000 tons to 247,000 tons. That's based on current and planned late-stage investment decortication and secondary processing within our membership. So it's that is the significant growth. There's absolutely growth that's going to happen across the board, but it is the fiber sector over the next 10 years from our 2020 base that is going to see a pretty significant growth. And what we call here is, of course, every acre produces straw, but what we're counting here is straw that's commercially sold. A lot of the straw is worked back in or burned. We don't count those tonnages. We just count the tonnages that are actually sold. Economic contribution, as I said, moving from our current $500 million to $1 billion in 2025 and approaching $2 billion in 2030. And again, everything else moves in relation to that. Our payroll is moving from our current 1,300 up to just over 4,000 individuals, and with a $200 million almost $300 million payroll, and moving our federal and provincial taxes up to around $47 million a year. So we do like to let our federal and provincial funders know that taxes going both ways. We also contribute. CHDA programming, it's funded from many sources on our promotion and market development, Agriculture Canada through their AMP program, and CHDA and its members. On research, the Diverse Field Crop Cluster, Manitoba Agriculture, ARDAR, and CHDA and its members are funders of research, and standards has been Standards Council of Canada and CHDA and its members. The largest single funder to all of our program is our members. It's our industry. Everybody else will match it or match part of it, but industry is the #1 contributor to our programming. First major program that we are working on is the Canadian Hemp Promotion and Research Agency. There's a committee of producers from across Canada, as well as importers and processors that are on that committee. They're working with the Farm Products Council of Canada, and we're well down the road to forming a national agency. That agency will initially have the right to collect national levy on sales between provinces. When we establish memorandums of understanding with each provincial government, then we can also collect on intra-provincial sales. And when that's done, then we can begin collecting levy on imports. That will be a more durable and long-term form of industry support for promotion and research, market development, and it will replace the current voluntary checkoff that's operating in a number of our members' businesses right now. Promotional market development, our major activities are conferences and meetings. We will have our National Hemp Conference in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan on November 15th to 17th. The heads up information is already on our website. We'll be launching registration very soon, so I would invite everybody for that week to come on up to Saskatoon, and it'll be our first time that we're together since 2019, when 530 people gathered in Calgary. We do hemp producer workshops as part of our national conference, hemp strategy workshops, where we both deliver information and seek feedback from members and other people in the hemp industry. And again, the 2018 PACRIM conference was an international conference. That's the last one and first one we've done. There will be more of those in the future. Education and promotional materials, both physical as well as electronic, websites, social media, etc. Retail and food service promotions. This is something we're putting together to start in 2023, and funded in part by our partner market development program which will take 50% dollars from members, matching it with public sources through the organization, again, looking at launching that in 2023. For hemp research, we have a number of projects that we're now ending in our first cycle of 5 years of research. National hemp variety field trials, agronomic and cannabinoid data being generated across many of our large and new cultivars in sites across Canada. All of that information is posted on our website. The elemental contamination or heavy metal accumulation work done by Innotech. We're in year 3. We just actually have completed year 3 of 3, and looking at the dynamics between cultivar, soil type, and agronomic activities. What effect does that have on how much heavy metal, particularly lead and cadmium, is harvested by the hemp plant, and what tissues is that are those elemental products deposited in? Very good information. There is variation in all of those cultivars, soil types, and agronomic activities. All affect significantly the amount of heavy metals that are taken up by the hemp plant. That information, when published, is going to be very helpful to producers across Canada to ensure that we don't end up in a heavy metal contamination problem in our foods. Dairy cattle feeding trials using protein cake at the University of Manitoba, looking at safety and efficacy of that feed source, as well as cannabinoid absorption and deposition in both meat and milk. So that is required. And post-harvest storage preservation done by PAMI. We're just finishing that up, and the report will be out this year. Sustainability, we're doing the first phase 2-year phase of developing LCAs and developing the mechanisms to have companies create environmental product declarations. That gets you into the formal carbon credit market. That allows producers and processors to monetize the carbon sequestration that takes place. But you can't do any of that until you know what it is, and that takes a lot of data gathering. Cattle, lamb, and lactating ewe screenings and hemp hulls, that will start, it's starting right now. It'll be finished by the end of the year with initial results. And that's, again, digestibility, safety, efficacy, and cannabinoid absorption and deposition in meat and milk. All of those feeding trials are in support of feed registration. Hemp research, looking forward, another 5 years of national variety field trials, probably looking at including measures of carbon sequestration in soil at sites, as well as the ongoing work we do in agronomic and cannabinoids. Also looking at NIR and NMR, quick measures for protein and fatty acid composition, as well as quick measure of cannabinoid content. Livestock feeding trials, they will go on for many, many years. Every time we want to register something, in order to start that, there has to be sufficient data. This feed ingredient fed to that livestock group, showing that it's safe, it is efficacious, and that there is not a significant transference of cannabinoids to the meat or milk or eggs. Hemp food and health, this has been a bit of an orphan project. Nobody's wanted to fund it yet, co-fund it with us, to confirm content claims, to confirm function claims, and to identify and then later confirm disease reduction and therapeutic claims. So first round project is relatively small. It'll finish the first 2, and it will give us indicative therapeutic claims that we will then need to research in small-scale human trials in the next decade. Sustainability, we'll complete the LCAs and work through methodologies on PCRs and yeah, Trevor took most of my time though, but I will be off right away. Test methods are required when you're developing standards. If you can't measure it, then you can't develop a standard. Minor use to get more pesticides in place, and agronomics, looking at rotation, drought resistance, weed pest resistance, hemp in a broader perspective. Large project will be processed food ingredients market, and that is taking what we have now and aligning it with the needs of the global food processing markets. Standards, all I'm going to say is that we're working with ASTM International. Standardized terminology, specifications for safety and quality, and guides for quality assessment are now completed. For feed, we will do that step by step as we submit feed applications to CFIA. Fiber, we're well into the terminology, specifications for dockage, moisture, and microbials, guides for in-field quality assessment, test methods for that, as well as facilitate national building code registration. Once ASTM has recognized the standards, it goes directly into Canada and shortens the time to actually get product numbers. I'm going to touch on this, and that is we have an issue with Health Canada, and this is something we need assistance with from industry, and we need assistance from the provincial governments of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, and that is Health Canada has come up with new and novel interpretations of the Cannabis Act and industrial hemp regulations, which are not consistent with the Cannabis Act or industrial hemp regulations. They're not recognizing that Schedule II products, I've mentioned them there, are in fact exempt from the Cannabis Act and international hemp regulations. They've imposed a zero tolerance for non-THC cannabinoids in all natural health product ingredients. So if you can measure it, that ingredient will be rejected if there's measurable levels of CBD. Yet they recognize that up to 10 parts per million THC, no problem. So they've set a maximum level for the most dangerous cannabinoid and have adopted an informal zero tolerance for all the other cannabinoids, which are not addicting, they're not habituating, and they're not intoxicating. They have restricted processing and extraction activities outside of Cannabis Act licensing. You can decorticate and make BAST, herd, and screenings, but right now today, if you would attempt to extract on the current interpretations, if you would try to do an cellulosic extraction, Health Canada would view that as only being allowed under the Cannabis Act. If you're looking at actually taking cold-pressed oil, and if there's any extraction involved to make a refined oil, Health Canada would view that as a Cannabis Act activity. You'd have to get a Cannabis Act license, and those products could only be sold in pot stores. So it makes no sense at all. This is a major piece that we're working on, and it is something that is very, very important to our industry to get fixed, as well as to achieve a number of other policy regulations that will require changes to the Cannabis Act down the road. Just want to say the Federation of International Hemp Organizations was officially formed 10 days ago. This is the global voice for the global hemp industry. Rather than having individual hemp organizations attempt to affect the UN intergovernmental agencies that set policy objectives that national governments adopt in the following 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. It started the discussions in 2019. A group of 20 hemp organizations came together in a working group to get the initiation started. They are global, and the interim board of directors was selected out of the working group, and they are charged with basically getting ready for the first national conference, our national AGM, international AGM, that'll be in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan on November 18th, the day after the CHTA conference, and that'll be the first time elected directors will come to that board. Again, it's a global voice. It's a global venue for all levels of organizations and companies to come together to achieve regulatory change at the global level, to acknowledge sustainability at the global level, to insert ourselves into the banking infrastructure at the global level, and to insert ourselves into the rural development architecture at a global level. The officers were elected at the first board meeting, so we have 15 directors that are there, again from the United States, Canada, China, India, Europe, Latin America, and another from India again. I was unlucky enough to be elected as interim board chair until we get to the AGM. Daniel Cruz from Europe, vice chair. Secretary and Governance Committee Chair is Hong Liang Ding from China, and the Treasurer and Finance and Audit Committee Chair is Patrick Atagi from the United States. We have these are the first three committees that we've set up, and the other directors. We have another 9 directors that make up the total. So I thank you very much, and sorry for stretching my time, but that's the five faces of hemp, and we are building on all of them. So thank you.
I hope you didn't feel any pressure there for me. Thank you very much.